HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
Today's program has been brought to you by Route 11 Potato Chips. Made with a secret recipe and superior ingredients, their mission is to make an outstanding product in a safe and clean environment. For more information, visit www.rt11.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. We're a member-supported food radio network broadcasting over 35 weekly shows live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. Join our hosts as they lead you through the world of craft brewing, behind the scenes of the restaurant industry, inside the battle over school food, and beyond. Find us at heritageradionetwork.org.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is Master Sommelier Michael Engelmann. We'll talk to Michael about the global wine world, and we'll talk to him about restaurant wine lists and a bunch of other things. We'll taste a Ribera Sacra for our weekly wine sip, and Michael snuck in a Chenin from South Africa, so that'll be fun to taste. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Alsatian-born Michael Engelmann knows wine. I mean, this guy knows wine more than most people know wine. He is a wine and spirits best new sommelier. He has won the American Sommelier Association's Best Sommelier in America. He's a Master Sommelier. He is only one of 14 Master Somms to receive the Krug Cup. What is the Krug Cup, you ask? Well, you receive it when you pass all 3 parts of the Somm test on the first day. So if 14 people did it, it probably isn't that easy. So that's my point. Michael's a smart guy. Michael Engelmann is the wine director at Danny Meyer's The Modern at the Museum of Modern Art and Untitled at the Whitney, both in New York City. I think this guy only likes to pour wine at museums, but we'll find out about that. Michael, welcome to the Grape Nation.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I think we have a lot to talk about. I hope we can get to it. But before we get started, I would love you to tell our listeners a little about your background and your journey in life and wine that got you really to where you are today, which is The Modern in New York City, and concentrate more on the wine-centric, past 10 years. There's some colorful stops along the way that I think, shaped what you are and, what you're doing, who you are and what you're doing.
For sure. I think I'll maybe start very briefly about the very beginning part of
okay.
This born and raised in eastern France, in Alsace.
A great wine region.
Absolutely. In a family that's not in a food wine business, but my parents love wine. My dad always liked opening wine, on the weekend, Christmas, inviting people over. And he's always been pretty open-minded about what he opens. So it's always been about not just wine from the region, but other part of France, other part of Europe, or the world, and it's pretty unheard of in those regions in France. When you're from one region, you drink local, and that's all you do. So
Is that true?
yeah, I mean, if
You kind of stay insular.
if you
on
go
the
to
whole-
Burgundy, you tend to stay in
Well,
Burgundy.
that part I get, but
I mean, I don't blame them either. But
Yeah.
it's. But I think that affected me whether I knew about it or not, and why we have such a diverse wines today too at the modern. But so grew up like that. Didn't know what I wanted to do really. I thought it would be cool to be a bartender, something like that.
Okay.
You can travel in the world and make some good money, and so I went to culinary school. Wine class was pretty easy. I learned it and I remembered it and I liked it. But I started as a server in France, and a couple of things happened. So I'm in my early 20s, 3 Michelin star restaurant. I'm a captain, so a server, right? And on a Sunday afternoon, I always help the sommeliers a lot. And as I'm pouring wine, the guests ask me, "What the grape of this wine?" And I look at the label and I have no clue. And I'm like, how can I be working in a 3 Michelin star restaurant? My goal is to be a maitre d' GM in a beautiful place in Paris one day and not know that much about wine. So quickly I realized I have to go to England or the US and really be fluent in English, and I have to really have a great wine knowledge if I want to be that general manager of
did
a
you
restaurant.
speak any English? Broken?
A little bit.
Okay.
My second language was German.
Okay.
But so very quickly I moved to England, and while living in England, I became friend with the assistant wine director there. He quickly realized I liked wine, and one day
What year was that?
That was 2004.
And that was in Hampshire at a restaurant?
Yeah, that was the Chewton Glen, so in a New Forest, so on the south, on the coast of England.
Okay.
And very quickly, I like wine. One day, he comes to see me, say, such and such left. There's a room in the wine team for you. Do you want it? I need to know now. The guy was pretty intense, became a good friend. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. So, that's when I really started to read about wine. When I realized that I didn't know that grape in that fancy restaurant in France, and back in England, I started to be a sommelier. So that's how it really started. So I spent a couple of years in
That's where the wine focus
that's
really
that's when really
coagulated.
the wine focus started. So after I left school, I was always helping sommeliers, going to wine tasting, help with inventory, but I was still a server, and but I became very good friends with the sommeliers, and I met really awesome people. So I love wine, and I loved everything that went with it. And as I'm in England for a couple of years, I'm like, okay, it's time to move on. I like to travel some more. So at the time, I was wondering between America and Australia. And I had met a lot of people that came back from the US and we absolutely loved it. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to get a visa for the US. So I sent about 20 resumes all over the country. One restaurant, a couple of places replied to me, and the one place I really wanted to go to, it was one of them, and offered me a position in a restaurant. So
And that was?
that was Gary Danko in San Francisco.
So incredible market,
Yeah.
incredible restaurant.
So at this
Were
point,
some of your choices in New York too?
yes.
Okay.
I had sent I think I took the Forbes 5-star, Relais Chateau. I don't think there were Michelin stars quite yet, but I picked all the top places, and a couple of them got back to me, and I'm like, San Francisco it is. I knew nothing about it. I thought it'd be warm and sunny. It's not really
No,
San
no,
Francisco.
So you
But,
leave England to go to San Francisco.
Yeah, so it's
You
2005.
get a legit job.
Yeah. So I tell my parents I'm leaving for the US. I was 23. I didn't know
Wow.
anyone. I just, packed a suitcase, moved to SF.
And a wine job, not a server.
And I had
not-
a wine job. Yeah, sorry. I had been a sommelier for about a year and a half in England.
Right. Okay.
But as you know, as I moved to San Francisco, there's, it's a special, very beautiful restaurant, fine dining. I have to learn all the tricks. So that means I start to run food again. I mean, as I'm a server assistant. Along that way, I help sommeliers during inventory, and very slowly I make my way into the wine team again. So that was 2005. And,
Right.
and on top of that, after 2 years in England, my English was way better. But moving
Proper
to the,
English.
yeah, moving to the US, I had to learn American,
Right.
Which is a bit different. But getting used to the culture, the accent, and so on, it was until you live it, you don't quite realize how much of a challenge it can be.
So you spend how much time at Gary Danko's restaurant?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And you left as the wine director?
Not quite.
Not quite?
Not quite. So I spent 5 years there. In 2000, so I started in 2005. In 2009, I came to New York for a sommelier competition. And that was an important one because that was the American Sommelier Association. I arrived in New York. I didn't know anyone. It was my first time in New York, I think. Second time in New York.
You came for the competition?
I came for the competition. Yeah.
And were you nerding it up a lot, reading a lot, studying, or just kind of on the floor?
Well, look, at the time, I was going for my level 3 advanced sommelier
Okay,
course.
so you were okay.
I was far from it, but I guess I really was starting to read about wine, My wine director at the time in San Francisco said, I think you could be a master sommelier, I think you could do it. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. I know nothing about it. But
Was that a real compliment that he saw that you got it quickly, knew a lot? Because from this point on, a lot of good stuff happens.
Yeah, but it doesn't come down to the title. Of course, it's a great achievement. It's something so special. But beyond that, he was he was such a wonderful person, and he really, was
Right.
part of my development and shaped who I am.
All the right things.
All the right thing. He was such a great person, and that's when really I started to go more to tasting and meet people and read about wine and know more about wine. So it's all the things that helped me shape my career to where I am today. So
you come to New York 2009. You come to compete in the...
American Sommelier Association, best sommelier in America.
Right, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I had Aldo Sommelier here. I think he won Best Somm in Austria 4 times. I mean, that's, once, 4, any time.
So Aldo had won in 2007. That's best sommelier in America.
America, that's
Yeah.
right. He came over here.
And so I ended up winning in 2009.
Okay.
But what really came with that I was like, okay, who's that guy? What's going on? But beyond that was that I won one of the best new sommelier by Wine and Spirit magazine.
Right.
In 2009.
So that was a busy, crazy, great year for you, 2009.
That was great. And in 2009, I also passed my advanced sommelier exam
For the WSET,
for the Court of Master Sommeliers.
Right.
And I ended up passing it with a high score. So what it really meant is that
Well, wait, stop there for a second.
Yeah, I'm going
You
all
had
over
the
the place.
highest score. There's an award. There's like the RUD and the other thing for the highest score.
Yeah, I won the RUD.
Right. So you not only passed the test, you basically killed it and beat everyone.
I'm pretty competitive.
So are you starting to figure out that you know this crap cold now?
Well, it started is my friend that passed the exam early in the year, got the highest score, and he had a good idea of telling me that if you get the highest score, you get a $5,000 scholarship.
There's something to
So
aspire
I'm
to.
like, I'm very competitive. $5,000 sound amazing. Let's just study as much as I can.
So you study for the competition.
I study for the for the exam.
Best American Sommelier. Is that an exam or a competition?
Yeah, sorry, I'm all over the place.
It's okay.
I'm studying for both.
Okay.
But the competition is first. So
Competition and for Master Sommelier.
yeah, so the competition is in 2009 in February or March, and in 2009 in July there was a advanced sommelier
Right. So that
exam, and that's where I passed with the highest score.
Right.
But what he really meant is that those two things ended up giving me one of the best new sommelier by Wine and Spirit magazine in 2009,
Which is great exposure.
with Josh Green.
Right. We talked about Josh. He
So-
does that every year, and it's a great opportunity for sommeliers to get exposure and recognition. All right, let's move, because remember I told you I don't want to spend forever on this.
Yeah.
So 2009, important year. Those two accomplishments. You come to New York for the competition. Something interesting happens. You leave the country.
Yeah, and the reason why I talked about that Wine and Spirit magazine is that the price that came with it was a trip to Australia. So with Josh Green from Wine and Spirit magazine and Wine Australia in early 2010, the five sommeliers that won, so Dustin Wilson and that you probably know and have met.
Dustin's been on the show.
And, a few other friends, we all went to Australia. So early 2010, we went to Australia. In between, I hear about this crazy restaurant in Sydney that has an unbelievable wine list.
Called?
Rockpool Bar and Grill.
Right. You showed me pictures. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Go online and look up Rockpool in Australia. You've never seen a restaurant like this. So what happens?
A regular at Gary Danko from Australia told me about the restaurant. So I went home. I looked at the wine list. I was like, I've rarely seen that. So when I went to Australia, I ended up meeting one of the person from Rockpool. And, just exchange business card and so on. So the trip to Australia was pretty special, nearly 2 weeks.
Wow. You were there a while.
I stayed a couple more days in Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very special. I think we tried wines we've never had before that, changing of the vision of what Australia might be. And come back to San Francisco, and 3 months later, I got an email saying, hey, this is Sophie from Rockpool. We met. I'm looking for someone to oversee Rockpool Bar and Grill in Sydney. Are you interested? So that was like in June.
Did you have to think about it, or you knew in your mind you were going to do it?
No, I had to think about it for sure. You know, I mean,
it's a big step.
It's a big step moving around the world. You're only going further away from your family.
Right.
There's the whole visa situation and so on. So
right. It's not walking through the door
no,
and starting
it's not.
The next day.
But, I was going for my Master Sommelier at the time. I had the best group of friends I've had in San Francisco.
Leaving a lot behind.
Because San Francisco back then was, everyone was living there. And there was so much going on. It was amazing.
But you pulled the trigger and went there. So the deep thing that made you want to go there was what? Curiosity, the experience?
I was a sommelier in San Francisco. And the opportunity in Sydney was to be my first wine director job.
But Michael, I mean, you didn't necessarily have to go to Sydney to get a wine director job.
I didn't have to, no. And there had been a couple more opportunities along the way, but I passed them because I didn't think it was the right one. But there was my first wine director job. I had a team of 10 sommeliers, 4,000 selection. Wow. It was overwhelming and scary, but it was... The reason why I really went is because I wanted to learn about so many wines you don't get to see anymore.
Right.
So, 45...
The circumstance was different.
45 and 47 Bordeaux, Tried all Romanée Conti, try all those legendary wines.
So what year do you take the job?
I moved in November 2010.
Right, and you spent how many years there?
So I spent 4 years.
And what you set out to do there, you accomplished? The exposure to those wines, taking the reins of the wine program?
Yeah, I like to think so. Yeah, now it was a bit of a difficult start to get used to a new culture and new everything. But very quickly, what I'm proud of is that we had built a culture, And I think to me that was maybe the one thing missing. I do think the wine list became better because one of my priority was to have more Australian wines. Right. And, a lot of older...
So an Australian restaurant didn't have enough Australian wines?
There was a lot of it. We had 4,000 selection, super heavy on Burgundy, Bordeaux, Barolo, and so on. We had great Australian wine, but we are a very busy restaurant. We sell a lot of wine, Australian wines to drink. But I thought that there was an opportunity to increase the selection of Australian wines. So
I think that's a good idea.
We went to auction and private sellers, and I think we had built what nobody had before in Australia, just an incredible selection. So, and those ones were very popular.
So you spend 4 years there. At the end of the fourth year, you decide to leave. Why, and then what happens?
It's not quite like that, but I'm in Sydney. It's probably the best job I've had, the best lifestyle, and I absolutely loved it. Aside from me is okay, what's next? I like challenges. But in the same time, I get an email one day from John Reagan and Sabato
From Union Square.
and they're like, "Hey, Michael, I knew them. We knew each other. They're like, what's up? We're looking for a wine director at the Modern.
Was Dustin working at 11 Madison for those guys then?
11 Madison wasn't part of
Oh,
USAG
that's right.
anymore.
Daniel and Will separated. Right.
Well,
So-
you know what I realized throughout the years, and that's why I talk about it, is everything connect to each other.
Right.
I met Dustin on a trip in Australia.
Right.
Dustin knew that I had an interest in potentially moving to New York. Dustin talks to Sabato and John, which then
That's what I was getting to.
they reach out to me and say, "What's going on?"
So he was a conduit, Dustin.
Yes, and
Okay.
that's how I think they reached out in January, February, and I moved in New York to New York in July
July of what year?
2014.
Okay. And you joined the Modern that year, right? We'll get to that in a second, but I want to ask you a bunch of questions. So I'm curious, you grow up in Alsace, you talk a little about your family. Wine was around, but it wasn't, a crazy wine family. You work in Australia for 4 years, really, an opportunity to shape everything at the wine program there. That's not a typical background for a lot of New York sommeliers. And it's Alsatian-born, worked in Australia, San Francisco, and all that. Did those experiences change or shape, the way you view wine or your career? I mean, do you look back and say...
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
How?
I think I changed as a person.
Okay.
Personally, professionally. Look, I'm European. There's no doubt I'm doing a lot of European wines at home.
That's not a Brooklyn accent?
No.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
And mostly French. But at the end of the day, I think that the exposure should be in England. Then SF, then Australia has opened my vision and my mind to wine.
Do you think more than if you just stayed in the States?
Oh, yes.
So
there's no doubt about it.
Okay.
I mean,
What about wine? I mean, the wine world and culture is a little different there. The type of wines that are consumed are different. So you had a different exposure than just sitting at a fancy New York restaurant for a bunch of years. True?
There's no doubt about that. I think my exposure to wines from Australia, from South Africa, from everywhere. But I also want to say wines from Burgundy. I worked on 4 different markets, 3 continents, and some producers are highly regarded in some markets and less in others.
Right. So you experienced that.
Yeah, and when I moved to New York, I started to order some Burgundy producers, Ribera Sacra producers, and, like a bunch of random stuff. And my reps asked me, what's going on? How do you know those wines?
Right.
It's like they were not hip at the time, don't know no whatsoever. But
You were ahead of the curve in a way.
I don't know.
Sounds like you were.
Yeah, in a way. I'm not.
Or you were willing to...
I wasn't as loud as... I wasn't as loud about it back then, I wasn't.
Right.
I wasn't on Instagram all the time and so on.
You didn't have to howl. You just did.
But I just did it because I
Yeah.
liked the wine, I believed in it, and I knew about it. So that is for sure. My traveling has shaped me as a professional and also opened my mind and thinking differently.
About wines.
Yeah, I'm a very different person in that regard, there's no doubt. Yeah.
All right, so I think it's fair to say, because of that, your view on wine is maybe more global. Your wine lists are more global. So I want to tap into you while you're here and spend a few minutes talking to me about, and currently, you don't have to look ahead and predict or look back. Tell me about wine regions and wines around the world right now, and even if you focus on a few, that'd be great, that excite you.
The list is long.
This is I'll keep the tempo and pace going.
No, but I think you're right that. Look, I think we have. I honestly think that reflection is a little bit in the wine list, in the selection we have at the Modern, in a way.
Right. You
And
brought that to the list. But I want you to tell, because not all my listeners go eat at the Modern.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell them, listen, here's some, like you brought in a Shannon from South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want you to drop some knowledge on people so when they listen to this show, they go, that sounded good. That seemed like a good value. This guy seems to know what he's talking about.
Well,
Let's talk about some regions and wine.
I think South Africa is there's a lot to be said about the country, and there's stuff happening down there that people should know more about.
All right,
because
South Africa is a region.
Yeah, or a country, but
Right. Country.
I'm in Sydney
growing
about
region.
7-8 years ago, and I tried a couple of producers that totally changed my vision and mind of South African wine.
Let's talk about a couple of producers that...
I mean, one of them is Sadi Family.
Spell it.
Sadie.
Sadi family.
Yes.
And what kind of wines are they making?
Ibn Sadi is one of the pioneers of the new South Africa, if you want to say. And I don't know, he makes 12, 15 different wines.
Okay.
But
Can you get them here in the States? Better wine stores, restaurant lists?
yes, you can.
Okay.
You can at the modern in good wine stores. It's small quantity. They come and go.
Right.
They have a big following now, but I think the one are incredible. White and red. He sources very old vineyards, very specific sites.
Price reasonable, or they're on...
Well, he's a bit the superstar of the country. So,
Okay.
if you define reasonable and if you compare it to a Burgundy or Rhone,
It'll be cheaper.
some people, it'll probably be a bit
the same?
expensive.
Okay.
But I think the wine are worth it. I think they're truly special wines.
Okay. We're talking to Michael Engelmann. Michael is the wine director at the Modern, at the Museum of Modern Art, and Untitled at the Whitney in New York. We're talking about wine regions. All right, so South Africa.
Yeah, now the other producer is Mullineux.
Spell.
Mullineux.
Mulino.
Yeah, and they have a wider range from, under $20 on a shelf in a store
Okay.
up to 100 plus. I was just in South Africa last November, and it was just unbelievable. Everything you hear about the beauty of the country and the people.
I've seen pictures.
It's
Beautiful.
It's very special, and there's...
All right, so give me another favorite new region.
Favorite new region. I think you picked the red, and I think it's the Ribera Sacra in Galicia, in Spain.
So it's Spanish. The region is Ribera Sacra.
So in northwestern Spain.
Okay.
Pretty much above Portugal, not too far from the ocean. It's centuries of winemaking, but you're really talking about the last couple of decades,
That's
where
it.
a newer generation is working some incredible work, and people are paying more attention to.
Okay. Give me a winemaker or two. Is Alguera one of the ones that we have here a good one? Okay.
I think you picked a great one.
Okay.
Another one is Guimaro.
Spell.
Guimaro.
Okay. I will post these on our social media sites so people can kind of look them up. All right. Can you give me one other wine or region that excites you?
I mean, look, there's no doubt that today in the Northern Rhone or the Loire Valley.
Okay. So the Northern Rhone and Loire are exciting regions.
Yeah.
So Saint Joseph, Hermitage, Cornas, all the Northern Rhones, some great vintages, 15, 16 current, right?
Absolutely. I just think it's such an exciting era to be drinking wine. It's should be in the Rhone, in the Beaujolais, in the Loire, in South Africa, in California. If you look at the last 10 years onwards, that newer generation of wine consumer, blogger, radio shows,
millennials,
winemakers, it's unbelievable. It's so exciting.
I agree with you, and I agree that all the regions you mentioned and many more, are terrific. All right, let's talk a little about the Modern and Untitled. You got there over 3 years ago, I think, if you do the math, and you started with somewhat of a clean slate. Wasn't there a new chef and pastry chef, and they brought you in to do the wine program? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you get to the wine program, which was pretty damn good, and you do what? I know you expand it. What and how?
Modern has always been an amazing restaurant for 10 plus years, right? And 4 years ago, new chef, new pastry chef, as you said, and everything. I'm brought on board as a new wine director. I think it was a great timing because of the location in the Museum of Modern Art in the heart of Midtown.
Sculpture Garden.
The Sculpture Garden. It's probably the most diverse restaurant I worked in. You have the bar, you have the bar room, you have the dining room, you have the private dining room. It's
each with a different feel.
Each with a different feel. Then you have a clientele that's from around the world. And the beauty of New York is everyone comes to New York for business, traveling, they want to see it. So we get such a diverse clientele. Then you have my story of having traveled, a little bit and worked everywhere. I just think it made sense to have a global wine list. Then on top of New York...
Was it more pigeonholed to the classic Burgundy, Bordeaux, Cali cult thing?
I cannot compete with the Burgundy selection of Daniel. It's just,
okay. All right.
And we have a great Burgundy selection, and I think it's important for so many reasons. But I thought it would be great to have a global wine list because not so many people pay attention to. So there's no point of just doing the same exact all over than everyone else. And I just thought it really makes sense with the location of the restaurant, who we are, the restaurant, and ultimately. I think a great cooking is when you have a bit of charisma and personality, and I think a great wine list is when you can feel there is some sort of vision, charisma behind it. And I just thought those two aligned. The ones are available in New York, so I'm like, let's go for it. And you're right. They let me do whatever I want. I have a budget and so on. But
right, which is a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
So you literally expand 3 times from 1 to 3,000 bottles. Where was the expansion the most obvious?
We went from 1,000 to 3,000 selection in 18 months. We went from 5 Australian to 100.
So Australia right off the bat.
Yeah,
20 times over.
Yeah, 20 times over. I mean, Burgundy was probably 3 pages of red Burgundy, and now we probably have 15. So, honestly, it's all over the place. Napa Valley, a huge... honestly, it's all over the place.
Right. South Africa?
South Africa, we probably have 40, 50 wines, and there were none when I started. So
Bordeaux?
Bordeaux, we've expanded a lot.
Okay.
All the vintages and...
What about the Teutonic wines? Germany, Austria, Rieslings? I mean, you expanded that?
Yes. I often think about that. As sommeliers, we...
Talk about Riesling a lot.
Yeah, I mean, sommeliers, we tend to like the less popular childs, and we tend to extend in those regions that incredibly, we have 6 pages of German Riesling. Do we sell that much of it? Probably not.
So it's more exuberance towards the wine than what really sells.
I hope my boss...
That's a sommelier. You hope your boss is not listening.
I hope my boss is not listening.
Right.
Does it make sense fully? No, but look, we sell the wine. We have all the vintages.
Friends come in late at night and drink it.
Yeah,
and go for it.
And a lot of those wines are so affordable, and we do have a lot of clientele that loves it. So
yeah. I always wondered about this, and I think you can tell me better than anyone. Wine by the glass. A lot of people think it's not a big deal, but when you go into a restaurant that's as diverse as the Modern and has a guy like you curating it, there's an opportunity to taste stuff that you'd never taste anywhere else. Mm-hmm. I mean, wine by the glass is important for a restaurant, right?
It's probably the hardest part of my job.
In what sense?
Because we are so busy. And
but what is that? I don't know why that means something.
It's a great problem to have, right? And I want to have that problem, but the success of the wine program is a success through the staff, right? So if I change the wine by the glass 3 times a week and the staff can't keep up and follow up, we're not going to do anything.
So it's time consuming.
It's time consuming, and you have a staff that knows very little about wine, that doesn't know what's happening, and the goal is as much for them to be comfortable with it so they can create that experience and talk. I expect my sommeliers to talk about wine to a guest and provide something and be knowledgeable, but when you server or even better, your food runner, the guys that drops you drink can do it, I think that's a true success. So wine by the glass in a busy environment, but I also think that the wine by the glass is a bit your cover page. So,
But isn't it a reflection? Like,
yes,
you better be laying down some pretty nice stuff.
So we have 10 whites, we have 10 reds. Out of those 10 whites, I would like to have 3-4 domestics. Out of that, I need to have wine that are a bit fresher and younger, but also want something with age. I need something lighter bodied. I need something full bodied. I need something that's very affordable and maybe something that is a bit more special. And I want to have something a bit more classic as a producer, and I want something a bit more new and up and coming. I want something that's a bit more
time consuming,
a bit more weird and wonderful, and something that is, I'm going to open it and I can recognize something. I can order and I feel comfortable about it. That's why it's so difficult.
So 10 wines by the glass just on the white sounds like a decent amount, but you have a challenge to balance all the things you just discussed, right? And then it rotates seasonally, availability.
Yeah, and I haven't even talked, you need much, the season, the cooking, your clientele.
Right.
So it's 10, 12 white, 10,
That's
12 red.
That's the most fluid situation, the by the glass thing.
Let's say that my mind doesn't stop when it comes to the thing, and I want to look at it like if I was a guest.
So on the business side, is by the glass an important part of the wine program? Does it make up for...
It's huge.
It is huge. Okay. All right. So don't look down or discount by the glass, especially at a good restaurant when you have a guy like Michael Engelmann picking them. You're going to taste stuff, one, that not everyone gets. And two, the guys explored the world to put the best stuff in front of you. I'm a big restaurant guy. I'm a big wine drinker. I'm not afraid to go out and, for meals, spend some money and buy some wine. Here's what I want you to help me decipher. The Modern and Untitled are part of Danny Meyer's Union Square Hospitality Group. He decided to go to a no tipping. The gratuity is part of the check and all of that. So let me set the scenario up. So I've been, I worked in the corporate world for a million years. You go out, you order $800 worth of food and $2,000 worth of wine. We always wrestled with how to tip that. Do you put the same percentage of tip towards the wine as you do the food? Do you look at it cumulatively? Do you do less on the wine and give the Somm, some cash? Now that's taken care of, right? But in that circumstance, if the wine is substantially more than the food, the same principle applies? It's that 1%?
That's a really good question.
It is a good question because I've been in the situation a million times.
Look, and you'll have a lot of people that tip 20%, whether they spend $100 or $10,000 on wine, and those don't. I understand that. The way I approach the pricing of wine is not my cost times something plus 15, 10, 20%. Let's say that I look at it as everything being included. What I really want to do with the Modern is to offer amazing value all across the board. So we have 3,000 selection, but we have 400 wines under $100 on the wine list. Service included. That's a lot of wine,
That's a lot of wine and
much?
a lot of value offered.
I would like to think so, and I feel really comfortable with the great wines of Burgundy and Napa Valley and wherever it might be, that we offer really good pricing and are very, very competitive.
So because you feel good about the pricing, the tipping, it's sort of natural. You're not hammering the wines. So so everybody feels good about the price, the selection, the tipping. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
You won me over with that.
It's
I've been to restaurants where the markups are ridiculous, and it's like I'm offended by the price, and I'm supposed to tip on this.
I'm not going to say we're inexpensive. It's 2 Michelin star in a dining room. It's Midtown. It's New York. New York is expensive, but if I really look at where we're standing and what we do, I think it's really good. I work in a museum, but I don't want the cellar to be a museum either. So.
Right. All right, Michael, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I have a couple of more questions, and then I want to subject you to our weekly wine list. And we have a couple of bottles in front of us, and we are going to taste the Ribera Sacra for our weekly wine sip, and we'll also talk about the Chenin you brought in. So we're talking to Michael Engelmann. Michael Engelmann is a Master Sommelier. He's the wine director at the Modern, at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and at Untitled at the Whitney. We'll be right back with Michael.
The following program has been brought to you by Route 11 Potato Chips. From the moment Route 11 Potato Chips dropped their first batch of chips back in the early days of 1992, they understood their destiny as a high-quality producer. Instead of succumbing to the frenzy of mass production, they took advantage of their small size and made chipping a personal art form. The payoff was immediate. An incredible potato chip. With a secret recipe and superior ingredients, their mission is to make an outstanding product in a safe and clean environment. In this world of uncertainty that we live in, Route 11 Potato Chips believes comfort food should be just that. Know where your food comes from. For more information, visit rt11.com.
All right, we're back. We're back with my guest, Michael Engelmann, Master Sommelier, best sommelier in America, wine and spirits, best new sommelier, does well on his tests, all-around good guy. Michael, you have a presence on social media. I see you tooting and touting about different things. I want to ask you how social media, and I ask a lot of my guests this, how do you think social media has changed wine and how we look at it and what effect it's had on it?
That's massive.
It's massive
It's
compared to when it didn't exist. Massive in a good way?
Yes, I think so, mostly. You know, at the end of the day, people look at wine, they want to drink wine. I think it's all very positive. Some wines are harder to find and harder to get. There's one thing you need to remember. I'm in Sydney, I'm on the other side of the world, and I see all those guys in New York posting crazy wine, you know,
Right.
expensive or not.
Right.
And going to those crazy tasting, and all I could think of is I want to be one of those person, you know.
So there's discovery, there's envy.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you know, this weekend there's Riesling fire, you know.
Right. I
And,
had Stefan called it, not Stefan.
Yeah.
Stephen called in last week just to talk a little about it.
So I'm like,
are you going to be one of the sommeliers there?
I'm going to be there.
Okay.
Yeah. So social media, you see all the things. I want to be one of those persons. So it has changed a lot. There's no doubt. But more people talk about it. It's great. You know, I mean, they want to drink more wine and less cocktail. I'm all for that.
Do you think... See, I think social media is great for discovery. I learn a lot about wine and the industry. You know, I follow you and, you know, just even when you're out to lunch on a Sunday with your buddies, just looking at the bottles of wine on the table, it's like, what are these geeky Somms drinking with Chinese food on a Sunday? That to me is important discovery. But I also see a lot of guys like mine's bigger than yours. You know, they're posting all these trophy bottles and all of that. I mean, which is sort of what you alluded to. You're sitting in Australia and these guys in New York are, you know, pumping out all these wines.
I mean, look, there's no doubt I post a lot of trophies too, and it's part of it. And
Yeah.
you know, you all get excited. Everyone is at the same event. We all taste the same amazing one. We all want to share the world and so on. And it's a part of it. It's too much sometimes. You know, it's a pendulum effect. But I mean, New York is crazy. It's a crazy market.
But in reality, you're at one of the finest restaurants with one of the finest lists, and the most enviable amount of wine passes through every night. And, you know, I don't see you. Every now and then I'll see you, you know, shoot a bottle of something interesting, but not every night. And, you know, it's part of your culture daily.
It is, and I post a lot, and I post way more, and there's a lot of fancy bottles, but I don't post everything because I don't want to. I don't have the time, but I always like the idea of, you know, I know there are places around the world I want to go to because I see them on Instagram.
Right.
Should it be a wine or a restaurant?
That's discovery.
And I always thought, you know, when I go to New York, I want to eat in this place. I want to drink this wine. So is a side of me happy with that? We slowly, through social media, have built something at the Modern that we have people that all around the world, there's thousands of restaurants, they want to come to the Modern tonight to have a glass of wine.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty awesome.
All right, tell me one last thing before we go to our wine list, which I want to ask you a bunch of questions. There's no doubt, you know, Union Square Hospitality Group does it as well or better than anyone. And I think there's a culture there. You've been there a bunch of years now. Is it real? I mean, do you see it compared to other places? I mean, you've stayed...
The culture?
Yeah.
I love it. You know, it's... You know, us as human people, we're always going to critique and say this and say that. I've been in this industry for nearly 20 years. 4 countries, 3 continents. I've seen it all,
Right.
and I worked in wonderful places. But I really enjoy what I have, and I like the culture, the people I work for, people I work with. I have conversation with some of my, managers and bosses, and that I've never had elsewhere
Because
And
of the culture.
because of the culture and the way I want to approach it with my staff is, in a way, I want to do that. Things I maybe didn't like, I don't want them to have the same experience, and I think it's very healthy, and I really think the team you have. I'll say that. I've never worked in a restaurant where I'm so much in the kitchen talking to the chef, asking about the recipe, tasting the sauce. And
the culture's conducive to that.
Oh, mate.
So happy employees
Yeah.
are very obvious to customers,
Yeah.
which make them feel good.
I love cooking. I'm a way better cook at home, and I'll tell you anything. I keep the guys watching. I ask questions.
Right.
The nice, So it's us front of house and back of house. It's us as a team and everyone else. I really think it's so easy and so difficult, but I think the recipe works. Yeah.
So is it fair to say that they sort of get it right? I mean, it's conducive to everything you said. I mean, that's an emphasis in the workplace.
I mean, I think Danny nailed it with
Right.
his recipe for 30 years.
I
the
just
book.
like to ask people
And-
that are, in that culture,
Yeah.
which is a nice thing. All right, Michael, we're going to move to our wine list, the weekly wine list. It's a bunch of questions that I subject you to. We don't want to spend a lot of time on each one, so barrel through them. So first question is, what are you drinking now? What are you tasting through? What's on your table? What's at work? What's a current fave rave?
You're gonna hate me because it's.
I don't hate you. I love you.
It's all over the place. Now, I mean, what did I drink last? I drank some wine from Sicily.
Sicily?
Yeah.
Very
and
cool region. What are some of the grapes from Sicily?
Nerello Mascalese.
Mascalese.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had some great dry German Riesling the other day. That was just stunning.
Is that Cabernet?
It was not Cabernet. It was a Trocken Riesling.
Trocken
And
Riesling.
I made some ceviche, and it was just
Okay,
it was so-
perfect match.
it was
so
so
you're
good.
drinking a little Riesling now. You're drinking a little Sicilian wines. All right, good ones. Michael Engelmann's favorite wine and food pairing. Is there one? Is there a few?
There's a few.
Personal.
That I have had, or that I
No,
like?
that you like, that you've
just-
done
that
over
just
and
like.
over. Or you
I mean, everyone says fried chicken and champagne,
Champagne.
which is delicious. I will argue fish and chips and champagne. I think
I think that's great.
honestly, on a rainy day, cold day, you have that. It's
So I ask this question to every guest, this group of questions, and champagne, fried chicken, champagne popcorn, champagne pizza. Nobody's ever said champagne and fish and chips. Now, people have said muscadet and oysters. I don't let people say champagne and oysters because that's too standard. So Michael's answer is a good one. It's fish and chips and champagne. That acidity is great.
It's one of them, I think Provence whites or Southern Rhone whites and like a sea bass over fennel and flambé with pastis and a beurre blanc flavored with anise is absolutely incredible.
That's the Michael Engelmann I'm looking for. That's a good recommendation. All right. You have been around. I want Michael Engelmann's favorite wine restaurant and or bar that does the wine service right. Let's just do New York. Are there a few places that you'll go to that you like, that you admire the way they do it?
For wine
Yeah. A wine restaurant. Or just wine bar or
or just restaurant? I mean, look, I
both.
think
Either one.
I think to this day one of the great experience I've had dining in a restaurant was at Le Bernardin with Aldo Somm.
Okay.
Before I knew him, before he was a friend.
Incredible wine,
That was-
incredible list, incredible guy, incredible food.
That was 10 years ago. The way he handled it was, I'd never seen that.
Right.
The knowledge was right. The way he sat, he spoke,
He's not a pretentious guy.
He dealt with us. No, it was just like, I was serious stuff.
Do you have a wine bar you like?
Look, I love Racine.
Racine.
I know it's a
Arnaud.
French place.
Yeah, no.
But-
Trust me, that's when Pascaline was at Rouge and Compagnie. There's a handful of places that always come up.
Yeah, it's all the way down on Chambers. And
Yep.
I think the wine there's always wines I don't see, or with age, or with things like that. And
That's why it's a good place.
is it a bit more a restaurant? Yeah, but there's There's
No,
a bar,
no.
you can-
There's no
yeah.
rule, restaurant, bar, or whatever. Those are good ones. I'll post those. Does Michael Engelmann have a favorite all-time wine? Is there a wine that to this day, or a couple of wines that is just so memorable, you can pull it out and recall?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be some. There was a very special Riesling for a special occasion.
Riesling.
Yeah, from
Wow,
a
what
great vintage in Germany.
Wow, what a surprise! A Somm picked a Riesling. What was it?
It was 1971 Egon Müller
Wow.
and Auslese, and it was just.
When did you have this?
It was a gift. It was a gift from a friend, and it was very special. But what else?
So
I've been lucky to try some really cool, all rare ones I wanted to in Sydney, but there's been some really great ones.
more in Sydney than even in New York?
No, I mean,
both.
honestly, I thought about that the other day. I went to I was selected for like a small wine retreat for 4 days. It's not a wine retreat, but they opened a bunch of old wines from Australia, and during that week, 3 of the top 10 wines I've had to this day
Were
during that
Australian?
week. And one of them is Australian, 2 of them are French, and to this day, those wines don't exist.
What was the Australian?
Was a 1955 Wins, Cabernet Sauvignon from South Australia, 1955.
And it held up well?
It was
Jeez.
mind blowing.
55? It's my birth year.
Oh wow!
I just gave it away. I'm an old guy. All right. Tell me this. I ask everyone. I know you're on the restaurant side, but tell me, my oldest son's 28, starting to make a few bucks. I always say this. He's going to a dinner party, wants to bring a few bottles of wine, doesn't want to bring crap, doesn't have money to buy a lot of, expensive wines. So give me your best wine retail recommendation around $15, 15 to 20. Give me a red, give me a white. You can give me a category, you can give me a maker, you can give me both.
Look, I honestly think you nailed it with the red one you picked.
So
it's
a
probably-
Ribera Sacra,
A Ribera Sacra from Spain.
15, 16 bucks.
It's 15,
red
16
wine.
bucks, and I think for what you get, it's delicious. It's lighter, it's spicy,
Good food.
it's so fresh.
Wine.
Yeah, and it's so drinkable. You can.
And Alguera as a maker, because I'll post it.
I like the wine a lot.
Okay.
You can drink a bottle of it and feel good about it the next day. So
All right, so give me a white recommendation.
a white recommendation around
15 bucks, 20 or less.
15, 20. I mean, look, if you wanted white, I'll probably go somewhere in the Loire Valley. Some Chenin Blanc.
Muscadet, Chenin Blanc.
It could be a Muscadet, yeah.
Okay.
You definitely have affordable or some sort of Chenin Blanc, something. I don't have
A maker. That's okay.
Yeah.
So Loire white. Good value for 15 to 20 bucks.
yeah.
Yep.
Dry German Riesling. Or
For that price range?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can find that stuff.
All right, so I'll post all those suggestions. All right, Michael, we're going to wrap the show up, and we're going to wrap it up tasting a little wine. And we have 2 bottles in front of us. Every week we taste a different wine on air. For our weekly wine sip this week, we'll taste a 2015 Alguera Ribera Sacra made from the Mencia grape from Spain. I brought that in. Michael brought in, tell me quickly what you brought in, a South African Chenin. Who's the maker?
Roll. Rall.
And what's the vintage year?
2015.
And 100% Chenin?
No, it's mostly Chenin Blanc and there's a bit of Chardonnay, Viognier.
Okay, so it's a blend. The Ribera Sacra retails for around 15 bucks, and Michael put that up as definitely a red wine to look for at that price range. What's the retail on the South African?
I've never seen retail because I bought it all. It will be around 20.
Okay,
20,
so that's,
max 25.
okay, so that's a sweet spot for this kind of wine. We talked a little about Ribera Sacra and Alguera. It's a hot, exciting region. It's a good producer. Just tell me a little about the Mencia grape, which it's made from. Some characteristics.
Yeah, so I was lucky to go in a region 7 years ago, and honestly, to this day, one of the most incredibly beautiful and impressive regions. Such very steep terraces, very rocky soils. Mencia, we often like to say it's a bit like a Syrah meets Cabernet Franc. I think there's a bit of that spiciness, peppery. It's medium-bodied, some red fruit.
I think it's grown on schist,
Yeah,
so it has that quality. No oak, right?
there's an earthiness. I don't know. If
I
there's
think this
used
one
oak
doesn't
here,
have-
but it doesn't
I checked
taste,
it.
It doesn't taste like it.
No oak.
It can vary, whether oak, no oak, and the producer. But I think it's such a good one. Thanksgiving, you have to wait for a few months. But turkey, cranberry, and
This
stuff
is a
like
good-
that, this is awesome.
All right, so you got ahead of me. I was going to say, what does this pair well with? So this would be a good Thanksgiving wine.
No doubt.
All right, so let's just taste it on the air. So color is, there is a translucence to it, but it's a deep red, right?
Yeah, dark ruby red.
Talk to me about your nose descriptors.
I got a smokiness. To me, it's a bit more like a smoked meat, right?
There is a smokiness to
I don't
it.
want to say brisket. I know Jeff Porter was on the show the other day.
Right.
But I think there's a blueberry, dark cherry.
There is a smokiness.
Yeah. And I think there's a spiciness, a bit of peppercorn, black peppercorn, spicy.
Yep. All right, mouthfeel is medium.
I think it's, yeah.
It's not light. It's not, full or whatever. It's medium.
Depending on what people usually drink, If they drink heavy, full-bodied Shiraz or Cabernet, that's going to be very light. But I say
Right.
medium-bodied, very fresh, dry.
Good acidity, right?
Yeah, you have that mouth-watering feeling that you want to you crave it, you salivate, you want to drink more,
Yeah.
and you want to eat with it.
Yep. And on the palate, I get some cherry,
Yeah,
that smokiness and leather. What else do you get?
I think leather definitely smoky, spicy, blueberry, cherry fruit.
All right, so we
And
pair.
there's an earthy, There's like
There is an earthiness.
I think that smokiness is also a bit that stony, rocky feeling you have.
Is that where the smokiness comes from?
I think it's part of it.
Okay. And Michael said a great Thanksgiving wine. Outside of Thanksgiving, what else could we drink this with?
You could do a little quail and pomegranate. You could do.
So funny. I'm making that for dinner tonight.
Are you?
Quail and pomegranate.
Yeah.
No. What else? What real people eat?
I don't know. Make a great ham and cheese sandwich.
Okay. There you go.
It'll be awesome.
All right. So that's the 2015 Alguero Ribera Sacra, an exciting region to look towards. All right, Michael, you brought in a Chenin Blanc from South Africa, which is another exciting region. What'd you say? It was a 16 or a 15?
That's 15.
All right, so tell me a little about the producer in the region.
So that's north of Cape Town. You're about an hour and a half. It comes from a different region, but most of it an hour and a half north of Cape Town.
Are there a lot of vineyards around that
There's
area?
a lot of
wine
vineyards.
country?
There's a lot of old vineyards. It's surrounded by mountain. It's absolutely
Gorgeous,
unbelievable.
right? Yeah.
Chris Donovan must be 6'5". I don't know. He's gigantic. Met him. He's super chill. South
It's his
African
winery?
South African surfer. Yeah, and makes a white. Makes a couple of whites.
How
makes
old
a red.
is the winery? Is it fairly...
That's fairly new. I can't remember the
Okay.
first vintage now, but less than 5 years.
Wow, really young.
Makes a few hundred cases of that. So
Can we get it here in the States, or it's hard?
You can get it at a modern.
Okay, so we're gonna. There's the invitation right there. So we're gonna taste this. So this is the Chenin Blanc from South Africa. Spell the maker again.
It's RALL.
RAL.
Roll.
All right. So it's kind of a light golden wine. Looks like it's got some good viscosity. Let's throw it over the tongue. Incredibly plush in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Give me some nose descriptors.
I think there's a white peach. There's a bit of an orange skin or blossom or something like that. There's some juicy pear.
Beautiful, right?
There's a plushness that I think is a bit of Viognier, the Chardonnay, the winemaking. It's a warm region, but that finish is so fresh.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a very fresh wine,
you
good
have
acidity.
very old soil, and I think you get that, again, that earthy, kind of drying feeling on your tongue on the finish. That is, I think,
Give me some palate descriptors on top of the...
the round mouthfeel, creamier mouthfeel. I think, again, dry, salivation again,
Right.
by the grape, the acidity, and I
The
really think the
acidity.
soil, granitic soil here. And yeah, I just think it's delicious. You know,
It is a delicious wine.
I think it's a good bridging wine if you want something that's fresh, but if you also want something that's a bit more texture. at the table, or if you just want a glass of it.
So let's put it in context for a second. You're going to the Modern, incredible menu. You want to not spend a ton of money on wine. You can get a bottle of this there or a glass.
Both.
And a bottle is approximately
75.
incredible wine. If
Service
you're eating
yeah.
fish and other food, that we mentioned, it's a great wine.
Service included.
So a big, smart, fancy schmancy guy like Michael at his big, fancy schmancy restaurant can turn you on to some incredibly delicious wines. And there's 2,999 other ones you can taste too.
More or less.
All right. I will post all the wines that we tasted and talked about on social media because we did talk about a lot of great wines. And the reason I brought you in is because I knew you would be able to bring us down that path. So I want to share that with everyone. Michael, we're going to conclude the show. If you have a question, wine happening, or event, hit me up at samatthegrapenation.com. That's samatthegrapenation.com. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us and like us. We're at The Grape Nation. We'll post Michael's wine list answers. We'll post our weekly wine sip wines, and we'll talk about some of the wines that excited Michael on our social media, so you can go out and buy them, taste them. Follow us on Instagram at SBenRuby, and follow us at The Grape Nation at hashtag The Grape Nation, and Twitter at BenRuby. Michael, you have an interesting Instagram and Twitter handle. What is it?
Sommelier 57.
I get the sommelier part. I don't get the 57 part. What is that?
Everyone asks for that. 57 is the number of my region where I'm from.
Okay. So there's some logic to that.
There is some logic. It's I started my email account, my Instagram account years ago. I was like, what am I going to say? My name is too complicated and too long.
So follow Michael on Instagram and Twitter at Sommelier57. You'll get a peek into what Michael does, what wines he's serving, drinking, the life of a sommelier. I follow him. I've been following him. It's fun and interesting. I want to thank our guest, Master Sommelier Michael Engelmann. Michael is the wine director at the Modern and Untitled, both in New York City. Thank you to our engineer, Vitor, and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam BenRuby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.